New Lacanian School. I'm responsible of the initiative. This is the first seminar of a series of online seminars on dreams. For 3 Saturdays, we will be together. Today with Carlos, the use of dreams in psychoanalysis from Freud to Lacan. Next Saturday with Jorge Acef. I see you here, so Jorge, welcome. Psychoanalytic interpretation between the dream and awakening. And the following, November 7, with me, dreams in testimonies. Carlos, I'm going to present you study psychology and Lacanian psychoanalysis in his native Venezuela. We am from Venezuela too. There he developed a career as an academic and a clinician. And in 2007, he moved to Toronto, Canada, where he works in private practice. He's a PhD candidate at the European Graduate School and is part of Initiative Toronto. He's our coordinator of all the activities and cartels. So welcome, Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Well, I would like to begin my presentation with a disclaimer. When we organized this series of seminars, I thought of my presentation as an opportunity to introduce basic notions of Lacanian psychoanalysis to people potentially interested in being part of Initiative Toronto. You know, we are a small group that is beginning in a city which, when compared with other geographies, seems particularly hostile to psychoanalysis. The reasons for this are structural, above all, and I always kept them in mind as a way to calibrate any strategy to implement or political orientation. The initiative was just starting to soar when our activities had to move to the virtual mode due to the circumstances we all know. The shift has been a great opportunity, as Ines mentioned, to attend seminars all over the world. But now that it's my turn to be on the other side presenting, I find the situation a bit overwhelming, I have to say. As the numbers of registrants was growing and the audience became more and more diverse, I began to have second thoughts on when to present and how. The subject revealed itself in its extension and complexity, and I felt I was losing my ability to hold the reins and accomplish the task. It took me ages to sediment what I'm presenting today. So I take note of this and ask you to treat my presentation as a work in progress at a very early stage. I hope this presentation could signal some key concepts for those new or relatively new to Lacanian psychoanalysis and motivate those better versed to participate in a discussion afterwards. Saying that, I want to begin with this introduction, a matter of discourses. In one of the most recent researches on dream, published this year in the Royal Society Open Science, a team of computer scientists analyzed 24,000 dream reports using algorithms. They created a tool that automates dream content analysis, quantifying emotions, characters, and interactions, and concluded that dreaming is associated with waking life. Of course, this approach has nothing to do with psychoanalysis, but establishes an appropriate background to the points I would like to present. If I begin by mentioning this research, it's because it characterizes the horizon of our times, one in which the push to standardization, another name for desubjectivization, necessarily includes keeping psychoanalysis at bay. In this regard, it is interesting to note how psychoanalysis is portrayed there as a mere system of interpretation of dreams that was displaced by modern ways of coding dreams content. Thus, psychoanalysis is reduced to the level of a relic. However, we know these operations are an effect of predominant discourses. Discourse is a concept introduced by Lacan in Seminar 16 and refined in Seminar 17, where it is defined as an organizing structure related to language but going beyond speech, which ultimately establishes a specific social bond. I quote from Seminar 17, "Through the instrument of language, a number of stable relations are established, inside which something that is much larger and goes much further than actual utterance can, of course, be inscribed." Specifically, let me share here. I hope you can see this. Specifically, Lacan identifies 4 structural positions: agent, the other, product, and truth, and 4 elements: the master signifier, the field of knowledge, the split subject, and object A, that can be placed in certain order in those positions. The structural positions are fixed, and the elements rotate, creating 4 different discourses. I think these brief indications are enough to make my point. Let's focus on the university discourse. There, knowledge is in the position of the agent. This knowledge addresses an object, and as a result, a divided subject emerges, leaving the master signifier in the position of truth. We can read the aforementioned paper with this key. The researchers began from the continuity hypothesis. This is their theoretical framework, their knowledge, to study dreams, their object. They programmed a computer to automatically code text and input it with 24,000 written dreams reports. The results, the outcome provided by the computer, support the idea according to which dreams are a continuation of everyday life. In their words, I quote, "Dreams reports contain statistical markers that reflected what the dreamers probably experienced in real life." End of quote. Here, we can see how the split subject emerges, one absolutely unconcerned about the other scene that dreams bring forward to the conscious mind. Dreams say nothing except reflecting what happened during the day. We can also see here how the most subjective part of the dream gets excised, inaccessible for the subject as it is a repressed signifier in knowledge. Any particularity present in each text is erased by reducing it to a code. With that, every question about the truth is, as Lacan says in Seminar 17, properly speaking, quashed. I think this can provide a good contrast to how psychoanalysis approaches dreams. Okay, I stopped sharing, I think. Yeah. I think this can provide a good contrast to how psychoanalysis approaches dreams. But before moving on, I have to say that this simplification of inner life to statistical markers doesn't stop there. It immediately opens the door to capitalist discourse, a 5th discourse introduced by Lacan in his conference in Milan in 1972. Along with the academic research, what the research are really doing is testing the tool to score dreams. It is now possible for them to build technologies to extract data, determine patterns for individuals, and, this is the twist, offer solutions based on the markers encountered. For instance, if the content of your dreams reveal that your mood is too low, quote unquote, an app can recommend to consult your physician to determine if antidepressants are an option for you. The paper closes with this optimistic note on how automated dream analysis, I quote, could result in well-being tools for communities or even nations. End of quote. Psychoanalysis definitely starts from a different point and goes in a different direction. Freud and the interpretation of dreams. Freud began from a position of not knowing. He listened to his patients and noticed their subjective implication. That is, how what they said was related to the symptoms they were presenting. It was from this path of listening that he discovered the importance of dreams. from playing a role in the genesis of hysteric symptoms in some cases, as he stated in studies on hysteria, they became the royal road to the unconscious. Freud also was implicated as a subject. And this is not only because he used his own dreams as material, but because he allowed them to tell him something about that which speaks. This is why the interpretation of dreams is a pivotal text. It roots Freud's approach in a tradition in which dreams have a meaning, establishing at the same time a rupture, a clear distinction that differentiates psychoanalysis from any other approach in that tradition. Lacan highlights this point in Seminar 3. I quote, "To be sure, the Traumdeutung is a creation also. Despite it's been said that interest has already been taken in the meaning of dreams, this has absolutely nothing to do with the pioneering work that is performed before our eyes. This doesn't finish with just the formula that the dream tells you something. For the only thing that interests Freud is the elaboration through which the dream says this something. It says it in the same way as one speaks. No one has ever seen that before. People have been able to notice that dreams have a meaning, that something could be read in them, but not that dreams talk." End of quote. Dreams talk, but they do it in a peculiar way. The message is not expressed directly as meaning is veiled. What we get, says Freud in some additional notes on dream interpretation as a whole, is a deception, a facade. Chapter 6 of the Interpretation of Dreams details how this veiling, this distortion occurs. There, Freud distinguishes between the latent content, or dream thoughts, hidden to the consciousness, and the dream content, the text of the dream that comes once someone says, "I dreamt of this or that." Says Freud, I quote, "The dream thought and the dream content present themselves as two descriptions of the same content in two different languages. Or to put it more clearly, the dream content appears to us as a translation of the dream thoughts into another mode of expression, whose symbols and laws of composition we must learn by comparing the origin with the translation." End of quote. We can notice here how far we are from most of the pop version of interpretation of dreams, where meaning is somehow encapsulated, already packed in each element of the dream and linked to an exterior, usually a transcendental order. In Freud's view, a dream is not like a tarot card. It is more like a puzzle picture, a Rivas. In this regard, Lacan is going to emphasize this point, reminding us what Freud already said in the interpretation of dreams, which is the dream content is, as it were, presented in hieroglyphs, whose symbols must be translated by one into the language of dream thoughts. We will see this in more detail in a moment. Then chapter 7 describes why the veiling occurs. If dreams hide any original meaning, it's because dreams talk from a place that is decentered in relation to the ego, and at the same time, in tension with it. The unconscious puts together the dream thoughts, and these only reach consciousness after being distorted at the level of the preconscious, so they can emerge without disturbing sleep. With this structure, dreams become the model showing how the psychic apparatus works. This model will be used by Freud to read slips of tongue and other parapraxis in his psychopathology of everyday life, and also jokes in his jokes under relation to the unconscious, as well as neurotic symptoms, of course. In what follows, Lacan and his return to Freud. In what follows, I'm going to present some key ideas from the instant of the letter in the unconscious, hoping to clarify the way Lacan approaches the how and why dreams are produced. Lacan reads Freud's theory of dreams to demonstrate the constitutive role of the signifier. For Lacan, this constitutive role is already present in the interpretation of dreams, putting Freud ahead of the formalization of linguistics he's resorting to. Lacan even suggests that the interpretation of dreams paved the way for these developments. In any case, the point here is that psychoanalytic experience discovered the structure of language in the unconscious. Hence the famous aphorism capturing this: the unconscious is a structure like a language. Lacan will see a similarity between the structure of the signifier and the Freudian unconscious. Some specific steps are important here to understand the structure that is being articulated. First of all, let me share again. First of all, Lacan departs from Ferdinand de Saussure's definition of language. Saussure conceived language as a system of signs. These signs are composed of two elements, which remain within an arbitrary relationship. These elements are the signifiers, an acoustic sound or written grapheme, and the signified, a concept or meaning that you can see on your left side. Lacan takes the Saussurean sign and subverts it, putting the signifier over the signified, as you can see on the right side of the screen, and detaching both realms from each other. The signifier and the signified become distinct orders separated by a barrier resisting signification, making the signifier independent from it. But what is a signifier? In the classical definition given by Lacan, a signifier is that which represents a subject for another signifier. To reach the implications of this definition, let's remember that the signifier has two properties. The first one, the signifier is a discrete unit. The second one, they combine according to the laws of a closed order. They concatenate, linking together in a signifying chain. And it is interesting here to notice that the definition that Lacan gives in the instance of the letter in the unconscious transmit the idea of a network where we can see a diachronic concatenation, a horizontal signifying chain, as well as a synchronic concatenation, sort of a vertical signifying chain. With this in mind, here is the aforementioned definition of the signifying chain: links by which a necklace firmly hooked onto a link of another necklace made of links. In this network, Lacan is going to see the mechanism by which the dream thought, the latent ideas, become the dream content, the text presented. This placement corresponds to the metonymic structure, that horizontal signifier chain where the concatenation of signifiers produces a sliding of meaning as signifiers are getting connected. And condensation corresponds to the metaphoric structure, that potential vertical signifying chain where one signifier could be replaced by another signifier, producing an effect of signification. If we align these rather abstract considerations with the technical aspect of interpreting a dream, what follows is that we don't have anything except what the analysand tells us. Only the text of the dream is what is relevant, and of course, this text includes the doubts, the omissions, the vacillations, everything that colors or modulates the way in which the text is transmitted. Lacan reminds us, and I quote, "You must start from the text, start by treating it, as Freud does and as he recommends, as Holy Writ. The author, the scribe, is only a pen pusher, and he comes second." A few lines later says, "When it comes to our patients, please give more attention to the text than to the psychology of the author. The entire orientation of my teaching is that." End of quote. For Freud, the interpretation of dreams initially consisted of tracing back the way in which the dream thoughts were deciphered to fulfill a wish. The formalization via the signifier allowed Lacan to distinguish between the unconscious and the subject and place desire where Freud saw wish fulfillment. If the unconscious is structured like a language, it's because it works according to the laws of metaphor and metonymy, lying in the gaps where the signifier is involved. Here we can go back to the definition of the signifier. A signifier is that which represents a subject for another signifier. From the concatenation of signifiers, something falls, or rather emerges, which is the subject of the unconscious. As Lacan says in Seminar 11, the locus of the network of signifiers. At the base of the creation of a dream, as a logical starting point, not an immanent subject, but an effect of language itself. This means that the subject is ultimately an enigma, and it is in the dream where it is at home. Lacan says in Seminar 11 that the only method for the subject to come into existence is mapping the network of signifiers. I quote, "What concerns us is the tissue that develops these messages, the network in which, on occasion, something is called." Regarding desire, it represents the limit of interpretation. While a wish can be articulated in the signifying chain, desire can't, and is embedded in the method as it's embedded in the metonymic displacement of the signifying chain. As Lacan says in Seminar 5, I quote, "Desire is the X in the subject that is caught in the signifying network, in the link in the signifying system that is subjected to the filtering and sifting of the signifier. Our goal is to reveal and restore it in his discourse." A few lines below, restoring desire involves the return of these signifiers. But this is not to say that restoring these signifiers purely and simply enunciates desire. End of quote. Desire is ultimately about an unreachable object. And this openness is what motorizes an unstoppable quest, the quest for desiring desire. This is what is expressed in dreams, the organization of language around desire following the laws of the signifier. This organization imposes a limit to interpretation, which is the limit posed by this unconscious desire. The implication of this is that deciphering reaches a ceiling, something Freud notices on the fly and named the navel of the dream, a concept that Lacan will develop in his last teaching. Before going there, and we won't go there today, I want to bring what Lacan says in Seminar 16 regarding the compass we should follow while interpreting dreams. It is not the question about what the subject wants to say. It is not either what the subject wants that says what it says. The heart of the matter is rather, what is that what, by saying it, the subject wants? Because apparently, says Lacan in this seminar, the subject doesn't know what it wants. From desire to the awakening. I don't want to close this presentation without indicating the line of work that Seminar 20 opened, one highlighted by Eric Laurent and worked in different places in preparation for the AMP conference canceled due to COVID-19. That is, dreams can be an instrument of awakening. Next week, Jorge SF will talk about it in his presentation, Psychoanalytic Interpretation Between the Dream and the Awakening. I am here going back to my introduction. We all dream, and our dreams can be treated in different ways and with different purposes. They can be dismissed as nonsense, or maybe worse, reduced to a series of indicators to cap the subject and put us in the place of pieces useful to a capitalist fantasy. In this context, I cannot but wonder, how can one describe one's desire or wake up a little bit to the real if there's no one occupying the position of the analyst. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. As you said that, well, now I would like to see who wants to make a comment or a question. I think you open at the end your own question. This last question, and they say that when you ask a question, you have an answer. So maybe you can say more about
You can
this.
hear my answer. Well, what I can say is that this is one of the questions that I've been having in my mind since I installed here in Toronto. Well, you know, we've been doing all these cartels about psychoanalysis in Toronto, in Canada. And in the context of more and more regulations and more measures to keep psychoanalysis at bay. So it's like I began to think in this analogy, this quote from Buddhism, that what is the sound that a tree makes if no one is in the woods to listen to it? So following that image, I think that we see it, the unconscious always talk, but the possibility of introduce a direction to the real, the possibility of listening from the position of the analyst, it gets, I think, more and more complicated in our context. So, well, as an answer, the answer is that's why I joined Initiative Toronto, to preserve a space, at least a little oasis where this could happen.
Thank you.
I have
Anka, yeah, thank you.
I have a comment, if I may, and is inspired by your talk and something that happened in my clinic this week, and that made me think about dreams slightly differently. And what happened is that someone I've been seeing for nearly 5 years has this week for the first time spoken about a dream. And it made me think about the place of dreams in what the subject brings to analysis, almost irrespective of the content, irrespective of the meaning of it or the place of it in a narrative. The fact that there is a dream and that someone can bring that of themselves is something significant in itself. So it's just in a way a question of what place dreams have in the clinic. And I can contrast that with cases where sometimes the analysand brings dream after dream after dream after dream. And there is a question, what is that about? So I'm not even thinking about how to analyze the dream, but just how to think about the presence of the dream, the abundance of the dream, or the absence of the dream in the clinic. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comment. That's part of the things that I mentioned the colors, the transmission of the text. And yeah, I remember a case where once the person connected with one dream, then began to talk only of dreams and producing like 3 or 4 dreams per session. So it began a question of what is this about and what to do with this, as opposed to someone that dismisses the dreams or says, I don't remember my dreams. Yeah.
Yes, I remember, I think it's Victoria Horn, an analyst of the school, that she was saying that she only believes in dreams. You know, like for her, dreams were, you know, more that because it's the real unconscious, no? So and she was invited in for the LANEL, one of our schools, and she had a dream before the conference, and that dream helped her to, to prepare the material. So, the dreams, yes, you said, like we as an analyst, sometimes we have a lot of dreams, but sometimes, it's the singularity of each person, no, their own unconscious. And I don't know if Florencia would like to share what I love what you a paper that she wrote for the papers in the Congress, that like for instance she had an experience, like the lapsus was not present in her analysis, just almost not present, but the dreams, yes. So I think the unconscious, expresses in such singularity, no, and in the process of their own analysis. So like in my case, I can share that I chose my last analyst through a dream. So it's very particular, no? So if anybody wants to raise their hand or just put a comment, a question on the chat, or
Maybe I can say something very
please.
briefly.
Yes, thank you.
I think it's very interesting when a patient brings multiple dreams. But the point is that we have to take on board the idea that these multiple dreams can also be a form of resistance. They're produced, in other words, to mesmerize the analyst, to confuse, even, and it brings up the question of the function of dreams. Dreams may take on different functions, even the function of resistance. So that's my comment.
Yeah. I had a question, Carlos, about when you said regarding desire, it represents the limit of interpretation. I don't know if you can say something more about that. The desire as limit of interpretation.
Well, desire represents a limit in as much as it cannot explicitly be articulated. It's always, so if we think in logical terms, so from the signifying chain emerges the subject, but the subject is looking for something that ultimately is an object that doesn't exist. That is, it comes from an impossibility. So this part about articulating, that's why Lacan says that even though we recuperate those signifiers tapping on desire, that doesn't mean that we are fully articulated. I think what we are doing is describing it in the possibility of open the way for desire to continue as this metonymic object in a way that the system gets motorized. So that that's clarified.
Yeah, that made me think about something that I'm going to put. Nasia Linardo, she gave us a webinar in Lacanian Compa, and then she said that the traumatic dream was the limit for Freud. The question made me when you said about the limit. So, but then for Lacan, the traumatic dream is not the limit, but rather the rule of the real unconscious. So I was, my question was about where is the desire there, no? So, and even Nasia Linardo, she said that that every dream is traumatic because it has the trauma as the basis that mobilizes it work. So, uh, so that was my question. You know, when you said that desire was the limit.
Oh, but yeah, but if you notice, I circumscribe my presentation to, let's say, the articulation in the symbolic. But then, because it's connected with, well, how this connects with the real and with the imaginary, and when what you're tapping is about the connection to the real. And as I mentioned, I was just wanted to put some initial pillars to begin to build on top of that. That was, in any case, my original idea.
Mm.
I think that clarification is very helpful about the object not being just unreachable, but rather coming from a non-existent, coming from an impossibility. So it's not unreachable because there is a prohibition or because we haven't got there yet, but sooner or later we will. So it's not a question of distance or time or space or anything like that. And it's not a question of prohibition, even if that comes into play. The prohibition, if it's there, it veils the impossibility. There isn't an object to be found.
Yeah, precisely. It's an impossibility in itself due to the nature of the signifier battery. And that connects with the imaginary and how it plays out in this object that is kind of that we, I don't know, in ordinary life could be this nostalgia. So the longing for an object that ultimately doesn't exist.
Jorge, would like to say something? Because we are going to hear from you next Saturday, but I don't know if you can, you know, give some motivation or what Carlos' presentation touches.
First of all, I want to say hello and thanks for the presentation, Carlos. I have a simple question about that that you quote in seminar 3 when Lacan tells, when it comes to our patients, please give more attention to the text than to the psychology of the author. I would like if you could say your ideas about that quotation, because I think it's very important. It's in seminar 3. It's very early in the Lacan's teaching, but it's actual.
Yeah, and it's interesting. This is in the preamble of commenting the Irma's injection dream, and I think it's as you mentioned, it's early, but it's already setting up what is going to be we could say the attitude of classical Lacan. So it's not about, and we can transpolate it to literary analysis. And actually, he quotes before, a few lines before, he quotes, I think it's Jeanette, saying that there's nothing more deep than the superficial. And is tapping on the idea that I wanted to transmit, that is all about the text. So we could get a kind of mesmerized, we could say, by affect, for instance, or the way that it's transmitted, or to put it more blatantly, we could be with an analysis that we don't like much as a person, but it's not about that. It's not about that imaginary consistency. It's about the signifiers, because even the affect is, according to Lacan, is determined by those signifiers. So it's about identifying the signifiers that allows the phenomenology to emerge. It's surmounting to that level, not to the level, and that would be the simple way to put it. It's not about phenomenology, it's about structure. So when we say that psychoanalysis is a practice of speech, precisely to tap on the emphasis on the structure and what emerges from the structure, rather than our own fantasies about how phenomena is organized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, there's a question here. Thinking of the limits of desire and potential mechanisms of resistance mentioned by Alan, would analysand's excitement with presenting multiple dreams be in part a desire to escape from the real? Okay, if I understand it well, I'd say that, yeah, we should be cautious. If someone is too excited about presenting multiple dreams, and in some cases, oh, and that's one of the other lines that is attached to the presentation, that all this occurs in transference. Something that is implicit is that we don't interpret dreams, or we don't work with those dreams one by one out of the context of the device. So a dream is always a message that is addressed to someone or something, and it's in the context of the analytical device that we can occupy that position to receive the dream. So in that case, all that excitement, well, is part of that. I would say it will be part of that transference and has to be handled cautiously. Also, I want to mention that presenting multiple dreams, in this case that I was thinking when I talk about the analysis presenting even 3 or 4 dreams per session, is again case by case. And in this particular case, it seems that the structure at hand was an ordinary psychosis, and the resort to the imaginary was holding things together. So everything that the analysis, the encounters were stirring up, activated all the imaginary to contain all that. So in that case, what I did was to try to extract or to identify, or allow this analysis to identify signifiers to name the dreams itself, asking the person for titles for the dreams, and or similar strategies.
Well, maybe I can come in again. I mean, I think you point there, Carlos, to something that's quite important, is to, let's say, distinguish the dream in psychosis from the dream in neurosis. Because in psychosis, sometimes what you have to focus on is the dream, not so much to be interpreted or deciphered, but rather a dream as representing the state of mind of the patient, a manifestation of something that's preoccupying the psychotic, but they are out of touch with. And so the task there is more about how does one work with that dream so that the psychotic subject assimilates something that is psychically preoccupying, but you could say split off. So it's not the traditional, let's say, form of interpretation. And I think it's important that you point to, let's say, yes, dreams in psychosis versus dreams in neurosis. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, so I think that there are many, many lines we could go through, and that was part of the difficulties in defining a trajectory or itinerary for today. And I want to mention that, yeah, it's a shame that the conference had to be canceled. I was looking forward to, well, originally in the spring and then in December. So this is part of that work, that unfinished work, at least on my side, working on dreams. Ines, are you there?
Maybe, I don't know if you can, because the thing is that, you know, in this part of Lacan, you know, in the symbolic, but he start also touching a little bit of like, you can say something about like maybe the Irma's dream or something about, you know, you were talking like to illustrate, no? Because the nodal of the dream also is touch, no? Is mentioned, but it still is not work so much that part, no? The real unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, I don't know if you want to say something about that.
Well, yeah, I decided to leave that just to focus on this little piece and leave that for a future encounter. Because I think it's also important to distinguish, I try also to articulate what was from Freud, what is from Lacan, and also it would be interesting to articulate what is from Lacan and what is from Miller, and to distinguish and not at the same time. So I think that is a task that exceeds my ability at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Last time, yeah. This I learned from our last activity that was with Leonardo, that we really prepare, you know, like questions. And like this morning, you know, this morning in Berlin, after the presentation, they had prepared like 5 persons, you know, people that were. So this time I think we came a little short on the preparation. I think I take responsibility that I left Carlos alone to prepare this, and you know, so I don't know. This is for Jorge. Yeah, we need to, yeah, to prepare how long is going to be the presentation, and then, you know, if people, because sometimes, you know, people naturally start talking, and this, like, it becomes a conversation, but I don't know, like now. I thank Alan for your contribution, no? But I don't know if somebody else wants to say something or a question or. like in I don't know, Jorge, what is your plan, but in my presentation in 2 weeks, I want to talk about the conversation that we had with Leonardo Gorotiza, that I will send the transcription in English to everybody that register, so we can work on that. Um, and yeah, so I don't know what else, Carlos, what do you think? Or if we finish early?
Yeah, I think that's okay. Is yeah, is what it is. So if there's any other comment or question, that's I think it's perfectly fine to leave it here.
It's like a short session.
It is what it is.
Yeah. I'm always amazed in psychoanalysis, the particularity, the singularity.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's it's amazing. And I remember when we met Jorge, Carlos, and I a little bit to talk about the this event, this series of the 3 conferences, and then I said that I had an hypothesis, no, because I want in one cartel that I'm working about dreams. I'm working, and I will present that in my turn in 2 weeks. But what I want to comment is that when I said that I have an hypothesis, that I sent to few analysts of the school to see what they can say about that hypothesis about the dream after the past. No? And then Jorge said, here in Argentina, we don't make hypotheses. No? And that was say okay, but I'm having this hypothesis, but it's amazing. I asked this, I sent the same email to like 7 analysts of the school, so they can tell me something about what they think about this hypothesis that I have. And everyone was a completely different. They didn't say I agree or not. It's completely different, the experience. So I love that, no, the singularity of an analysis of an end of analysis of a school. Also we have singularity. Every school is so different. I now have the experience of LANEL and the NLS, and even if they both has different countries, but and in LANEL we have only one language, Spanish. In the NLS we have English, French, or Greece, like different languages. And the solutions, like even our initiative, Toronto, it was a solution to support people that don't that we are where there is no school. So the solutions are so different, and yeah, today is an example, no? So the work can be small, but can be, good work. So really, I'm very happy that we are here, and I want to thank Carlos, no, for
Yeah.
this work.
Sorry, Ines. Someone is asking here in the chat, what is the place of dream virtual analysis nowadays?
Okay,
Due
that's
to
interesting.
pandemic and neurosis.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, this has been, well, I think we all been elaborating now for months. And I think it's interesting. It's now, well, we are still seeing what could be the effect of this and how we could handle it. And but nevertheless, some guidelines kind of are emerging. Like um, one is that definitely is case by case. It's interesting to see how different analysts react. Well, and also it's the position of the analyst. I know some analysts that they basically stopped or reframe, saying that, well, what is happening online is not analysis. Um, Also depends on the case. I sometimes I use the background because I don't have anything on the wall, and but some analysts don't tolerate that virtual in the virtual, and with others, it has to be in person. The other guideline or principle that is kind of emerging is that, yeah, it could be a temporary measure, but we cannot expect to have a full analysis online. I think that the lack of the bodies in the space definitely affects the process and alters the device, the setting. And as Elias is saying, some effects will have to be processed in a procure. So yeah, we're starting to see those effects after, here is like a 6-10 months now of confinement. And regarding dreams, I don't know if I have enough experience, but in the experience in working online, yeah, there's something that doesn't fit in working with dreams in a virtual analysis or in a virtual encounter. I don't know if anybody has more experience, but there's another layer there complicating the work on dreams through Zoom, for instance.
I can share a little bit of my experience. The case I mentioned where a dream appeared, the dream appeared for the first time after a few months of working just online, which is interesting in itself. I don't know why that is, but this is what happened. I have, before the pandemic, I work on Skype and have used that occasionally, as I have used the telephone, for instance, with a patient who had a baby and wasn't able to travel but didn't want to stop, and that happened for a little while, or with people who travel for work or things like that. So it's not entirely new to me. And with people that were on the couch in the consulting room, the way that seems to work best is that we use the screen to say hello, and then the screen is turned off as a kind of going on the couch, and many literally do lie down with some computer or phone next to them, and then we say goodbye at the end with an image again. So I have not found that has impeded so much the possibility to talk about dreams, and even the creation of dreams where there weren't any before. But I totally agree, it's a case by case thing to consider.
Okay. Anything you want to say, Ines, to begin to wrap up?
No, I wanted to thank you, everybody, and thank you, Carlos, for this work. It was really good. Yeah, I think most of you are registered already for next Saturday, and we'll have Jorge. So we'll present you formally. You're a member of AMP and the EOL. So talking about interpretation between dream and awakening. And well, I mentioned already that in 2 weeks, I will talk about the conversation we had with Leonardo Orotiza after the past few years, like 9 or 10 years after he did the pass. And I will incorporate some also other testimonies, because I'm very interested about the dreams, what happens after the pass. No? And I think has to do with this part of the trauma that I mentioned about the real unconscious. No? But I think it's very interesting because the past is a learning. It's an amazing learning from us. So, well, thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carlos.
Yeah.
Thank you. Till next time.
Till next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Till next Saturday.
Next. Thank you.